Hello everyone and welcome back to the Ryan Retro channel. Today I'm really excited to show you these two new products. I mean, I'm always kind of excited, but today I'm especially excited. And to explain why I'm so excited to show you these two products, let me show you some of my handheld collection. I have a lot of handhelds, and this is not even all of them. This is just what I could fit on the frame of the camera. But if you look closely, you might be able to find two that are exactly the same. And it's not these two. These are actually somehow different. No, the ones that are exactly the same are my two beloved TrimUI Bricks. I absolutely adore these things, and I've been raving about them for months. Whenever I go out of my house and take one handheld with me, it's always my purple TrimUI Brick, just like my first ever purple Game Boy Color. I made a video about my original purple TrimUI Brick a while ago, saying how I think it's incredible. Since then, I also did a shootout between the TrimUI Brick and the Retroid Pocket Classic, where I decided that my winner would be the TrimUI Brick hands down. And since that video came out, I've used the TrimUI Brick every single week, almost every single day, and I've not really touched the Retroid Pocket Classic once. I just much prefer this device. Since then, I've even picked up a second one to play around with custom firmware. We have loads of great choices for custom firmware. We have very minimalist firmware like MinUI. We then have NextUI, which builds upon that even more. PackUI, which takes that even further and lets you have a little retro buddy. We recently got Nully and MuOS as well. The sky is just the limit when it comes to custom firmware for these, but I actually prefer the stock firmware, and we'll get into that a little bit more as the video goes along. But one new release which came out a few months ago that I haven't as yet picked up is the TrimUI Brick Hammer. That is the all-metal version of these. And the reason I didn't pick one of those up is because I wasn't really fond of the colors. The colors were quite fun. There was a rose gold pinkish kind of color. There was a garish green. And there was a metal color that just looked a little bit boring. But now TrimUI have released two new colors of the TrimUI Brick Hammer, black and silver. And they were kind enough to send me over both colors for me to unbox and show you today. If you look closely at the labels here, we have a black label and a silver label. So I'm going to show you now the two colors and tell you how I've been using it over the past week. So let's begin with the black version. This is a TrimUI Brick Hammer, so it's made out of metal compared to the originals which are made out of plastic. Therefore, it's quite a bit heavier. It's noticeably heavier in the hand and just feels super solid. It's black all around with a silver accent on the back. And as I unbox the other one, you're going to see they're basically opposites of each other. So taking the silver one out of the box, this one is of course silver all over with black on the back. So they are pretty much opposite to each other. And I just have to say right away, this is possibly the most beautiful handheld I've ever seen. It is just beautifully crafted. It's so nicely chamfered and curved that I really believe that if you just slapped an Apple sticker on the back of this, Apple would probably charge about $500 for this. Although that's probably saying more about Apple than it is anything else. It's quite a bit lighter than my MacBook Air, but it's a pretty decent match to my Mac Mini. So if you're a fan of that Apple silver, you are going to get a pretty good color match here. And the whole build quality just feels expensive and premium. And the crazy thing is, it's not expensive at all. In the box, you also get a USB-A to C slow charging cable, as I found the bricks do seem to be a little bit finicky with fast chargers. Even my super fast charger here only charges at around 3 watts. We of course have a little instruction manual, and the one included is pretty good. It tells you what the buttons do and how to use the shortcuts. It tells you how to add best games and thumbnails and how you should organize your media. It's a pretty nice little starter guide for all the functions of the brick. And the brick doesn't really have that many functions in the first place, which is why I recommend it to beginners. We also get multiple shoulder button choices, so you can change the shoulder buttons if the stock ones don't really work for you. In my previous review video, I went through all of the shoulder button choices and I decided I like the stock ones the best. And one thing to note with the brick, probably one of the only downsides of it, is these shoulder buttons fall off super easy. I mean, that took no force whatsoever to just slide that off. So my advice to you would be, if you're happy enough with the stock shoulder buttons, don't change them. Just keep them firmly secure and then they shouldn't fall off. And another negative a lot of people gave the original brick was it heats up quite a lot here on the back. The original brick has a plastic construction, but this back part is metal and acts like a heat sink. So what TrimUI have done with the new brick hammer is they've made the entire chassis metal, so the whole body acts as a heat sink. That is both a positive and a negative in my opinion. The positive is rather than just sending all of the heat through this rectangular heatsink on the back here, you've got this whole surface area to evenly distribute and dissipate the heat through. The issue with that is the brick hammer sometimes gets a bit warm in your hands because you feel that heat through all sides of the device. On the plastic TrimUI brick, this part gets pretty toasty, but I find that I don't really ever touch this part. When I'm using it, I'm holding the plastic, I have my fingers on the triggers here. I'm not really touching the warm part very much. That was never an issue for me. So the whole device getting warm and toasty, in my use case, actually might be a bit of a downgrade. But this does also have some great upgrades. So let's take a look what you're getting over the original brick if you pay the extra money for a brick hammer. The first and most obvious advantage is that rock solid build quality. If you've seen any of my previous reviews of the plastic brick, I raved about how great this build quality was. It feels super solid. From the short travel clicky buttons to this very premium feeling metal portion on the back, the LED lights which change color depending on what system you're playing and light up right where a Game Boy cartridge would go, just fill me with joy. The customizable switch that can be used to mute the device like an iPhone, the fantastic screen quality, and just the way it feels like a small premium refined Game Boy. I just absolutely love this device. And the brick hammer takes everything that's great about the original brick and puts it in an even more solid chassis, completely made of metal, adding some weight and heft to it that feels even more premium. The buttons somehow feel even more solid. Even though I'm certain they're exactly the same buttons, just being in this metal shell makes them feel even more solid than the original. The triggers also feel more solid, once again likely due to the chassis. And there has been one improvement I've noticed over the original, and that is the speakers. Using my classic game test, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the one I always use to test audio quality, the brick hammer is a little bit louder, but it's just so much more rich and full sounding than the brick. I always thought the brick sounded pretty good. I never had any real complaints about the sound. I mean, it never blew me away, but for the price and the size of the device, I thought the sound was pretty good. But listening to it side by side, the brick hammer is just so much richer and fuller and just sounds better. And because of this, I've started using a new feature of the brick, one that I never even thought of using before, and that's the built-in music player while playing games. I've actually really been enjoying listening to music with the brick hammer, just propping it up on the desk like this, looking at the album artwork and the waveforms flying around, and listening to some of my favorite songs. Now, of course, I can't actually share these songs on this video because of copyright, so instead I'm going to have to play a copyright-free song from the YouTube library, which is not nearly as good. I'm hearing instruments and parts of the music in this that I can't even hear in this. Now, I don't see this as being a music player. I know there are a lot of people I've seen on Reddit who are using a TrimUI Brick with a DAC and using it as an MP3 player, which I think is awesome. But I wouldn't really use the speakers. The brick hammer, however, I think sounds excellent. So what I've been doing lately is I've been playing songs in the background, not these songs, but my copyright songs, while playing games. So I just play the song in the music player. Let's just turn it down so I can hear myself speak. We can hit the menu button and choose background play. And now we can just access all of our games and other things while we're listening to the music. When you're playing your music, you can then press the menu and select buttons at the same time to bring down this kind of almost Android style drop down shade. Here you can do things like turn the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on and off, turn the LEDs on and off, change the volume and brightness, see the CPU load and temperature. And it's in here where you can access your music controls. You can play and pause your music, go to the previous and next song, all without needing to leave your game. I can jump into Pokemon Ruby, load my save file. Then we have the Pokemon Ruby music coming through as well. So I'm going to go into the advanced menu, settings, audio, and just toggle mute. So now I have no game sound coming through and I have my music playing while I'm playing my favorite retro games, which just gives me another way of using a device like this, enhancing the experience. I won't always do this. I'll usually be listening to the music and the sound of the game, but sometimes it's just nice to chill to some music coming out of the speakers while you play a game. It's nice to have those kind of options. One of my favorite features of the Brick, a little switch. Now it's muted. And speaking of Pokemon Ruby, I actually completed this game the other day. It's been a dream of mine to complete this since I was a kid. I used to sit there staring at the box, dreaming of catching Groudon, but I just never got around to it. So now, finally, on the Brick Hammer, I've completed that goal. And I have Groudon, along with some of his pals like Reggie, Gulliver, and Flamin' Nora. I would say Game Boy Advance is probably the best kind of system to play on a little handheld like this. It's quite reminiscent of a Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance, in my opinion, was the best the Game Boy ever got. So being able to play classic Pokemon games like this is just absolutely wonderful. Of course, we can use those secondary trigger buttons as hotkeys. So I have one of them set to toggle on fast forward. I have the other one set to be a hold to fast forward that I can hold and let go of any time. And as I mentioned in my previous Brick video, the reason I think the Brick is fantastic is because it's so accessible. You don't need to know all the really deep, intricate things about how to emulate in order to use one. If you're like a lot of people who are probably watching this channel, you probably do like to tinker with stuff. You know that I do. So we can absolutely do that by hitting the menu button and coming to Advanced Menu. Then we have the full RetroArch menu that we can sift through, search through, tinker with to our heart's content. I've done that a little bit already to add some different borders, bezels, overlays, and things like that. But the beauty of the Brick is you don't have to do any of that if you don't want to. If you want to gift this to a friend, a family member, they don't need to know any of that stuff. Because if they just hit the menu button, there's such a simple menu here. There is a super easy save button and you have 10 save slots. There's a load button to load them back up. So I saved some of the memorable moments of the game, like when I was in a cable car and when I was catching Groudon. We then have net play, which is something I haven't even gotten into yet on the Brick and I'll have to look into more in the future. But for someone who doesn't really know about the tinkering side of things, all they're going to need to do is save, load, continue the game, or exit the game. That's it, and it's so simple, it comes set up right away. If you buy one of the versions that comes with an SD card in it, it's going to be loaded up with games already for you to play. And if you get one without the SD card, they're super easy to make. And probably my best feature of the stock experience, and why I stick with stock over one of the numerous custom firmwares, is this big search bar at the top. Some people only put a few games on their SD card, maybe just the 5, 10, 20 games they want to play. I am not one of those people. I load up as many games as I can cram into the storage as possible. I've just smashed absolutely everything on here because that's just the way I roll. And while searching through them is not too bad, you can just move up and down with the D-pad. You can use left and right to skip through pages, or the left and right triggers to also skip through pages. And if you find a game in the list somewhere that you want to remember for later, for example, Outrun, you press the menu button and you can add it to your favorites to just access that easily at any time. But I think the search bar is just incredible. Let's say, for example, I want to play some Yu-Gi-Oh games. I can just type YU dash, press start, and here are all my Yu-Gi-Oh games across all of my different systems. Once again, if I find one that I'm looking for, I can hit the menu button, add favorite, it shows the name of the game, and underneath it shows what system that's on. So this is on GBA. Down here we have some Game Boy Color games, a DS game. It's just so easy to jump in and out of systems. So if you're a newbie to these kinds of devices, this is such a beautiful, easy way to use it. And if you're someone who loves tinkering, there's so many custom firmwares you can play with for days. So what kind of games can you play on here? Well, of course you can play Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance, and they're going to be the preferred games to play on a system like this. You can play things like Game Gear, of course even older systems like the NES and the SNES. I've been playing Mario on this, and I took a couple of videos and pictures to show just how easy it is to take it out of your pocket, play a game and put it back. You can play DS, even PSP plays pretty well on here. It's also good for PlayStation 1 games. All the games that I grew up playing in the 90s, they're all going to run really nicely on here, which is why for me this is such a beautiful, nostalgic retro machine. PSP works well on here, it looks great and runs smoothly, at least the simple card games that I'm playing. The more demanding PSP games might give you a little bit more trouble, but the ones that I play have been running super smoothly on here, and actually look quite good at this aspect ratio. There is a tiny bit of pillar boxing at the top and the bottom of the screen, but not too bad. All of the TrimUI Brick variants come with a black border around the screen, and it's a nice contrasty punchy screen. So when you're playing, you don't really notice the black bars. The real limits of the system are going to be things like Dreamcast. Most games that I tried are quite choppy and don't really play very well. Let's jump into Super Mario 64 to show you why I like these customizable hotkeys on the TrimUI Bricks. So here we are in Super Mario 64, and in this game you need an analog stick to move the character. If you're using only a D-pad, you cannot move. I can jump, I can punch and kick, but I can't move. So I've mapped one of these hotkeys to switch between a D-pad and analog stick functionality. So when I press this button, it's now going to change the D-pad into an analog stick, and I'm now able to freely run around and play the game. So just like that, with one button, I can now play a game that before wasn't playable. I've set the other button here to turn on and off the LED lights, which you can see right now are turned off. So if I just tap this button like that, we now have some nice lighting. You can customize quite a few different functions to these two buttons and this switch. I like to make this button toggle on and off the lights, this button change the D-pad and analog stick functionality, and this button mute and unmute. I just find that super comfortable. I never really need to move my hands much or go digging through any menus. Everything is within reach, and the only time I ever need to access a menu is just this simple one to save and load my previous save states. The Brick does also come with some other apps, like an e-reader if you want to read some books on here. I don't know why anybody would do that. You can view your pictures. You can use Moonlight to stream from a computer, which is something I haven't tried before, but I would love to try in the future. We have a media player if you want to look at some videos on here. Here's one of me riding a bike through the Korean countryside being followed by my drone. Please check out my Korean channel and subscribe to that if you haven't already. It also comes with this Chinese video, I guess just as a demonstration. And as the Brick does have a nice screen that's contrasty and very high pixels per inch, I could see this being a pretty good little media device, especially with the upgraded speakers. Now, of course, I'd rather use my phone to watch media on because it's better, but if I was going traveling somewhere and I wanted to save my phone's battery, this could be a nice little device to prop up on the table or to just lie down like this and just watch some videos on. It has an integrated headphone jack, which my phone certainly doesn't have. It has Bluetooth support to connect some Bluetooth headphones. It's just a really excellent package. There is also port master support as well, so you can play some ports like Balatro and Stardew Valley, but I find these ports are quite laggy. I wouldn't really suggest using them. If you're in a pinch and you are desperate to play some Stardew Valley, I mean, go for it, it does work, but it's quite laggy. It's certainly not a great experience. It doesn't really run very well. So if you absolutely must play Stardew Valley and Balatro, you do have the option, but they're not great performers here. I would stick to Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, PlayStation 1, PSP, NES, SNES, and all of those more classic games like the Mega Drive, Atari, and arcade systems where you can play games like Street Fighter. Those are all going to be fantastic. Stardew Valley doesn't really run very well. And while Dreamcast is here, I would not say this is playable at all. It's really slow and laggy, and it just seems to get even slower the more you play. I would love for these Dreamcast games to be playable because I absolutely love playing them when I'm traveling, but it's just not a nice experience whatsoever. So these are the new TrimUI Brick hammers in silver and black. If you want something really stealthy, then the black is a fantastic option. I think the silver is just absolutely gorgeous. Probably the most beautiful handheld I've ever used, so this is going to be my go-to pick from now on. And if you'd like to save a little bit of money, you can of course still go with the original TrimUI Bricks, which are basically exactly the same, only the speakers are a little bit worse, and they're made out of plastic instead of metal. Apart from that, they are basically the same device. They're all fantastic. They are my go-to travel picks, my go-to picks when recommending a handheld to someone who doesn't want to tinker with stuff, or maybe a kid. If you are thinking about buying one for a kid, I would actually still recommend the original, because with the extra weight of this and it being all metal, it actually does kind of feel like a weapon. I think you might actually be able to use this as a hammer. I don't think I'd want to give this to a kid who might smack me on the head with it. I'd rather give them this nice, light, plasticky one that can take a beating. So if you are thinking about buying any of these, I do have an affiliate link in the description below to the official TrimUI store. So please consider using that if you would like to buy one. I hope this video was useful, fun, entertaining, or something else positive for you. If it was, please give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye.